Hello there, and welcome to another episode of Live with Little Data. I'm Edward, and I'm joined today by Lou from Grid and Pixel. Welcome, Lou.
Ed, thanks for having me, man. And it's great to see you again. It's been a few weeks.
Yeah. Well, we saw. So we were both in Toronto for the Shopify Editions conference. But yeah, it probably was a few weeks ago. It's gone like a blur. But it was fun, right?
Yeah, it was great. My first time in Toronto. I got to see a lot of familiar faces like you and the rest of the Little Data crew, plus a lot of new faces too. Agencies, CEOs from tech partners, Shopify folks. Then we got to go to the Shopify headquarters, and that's where we were hanging out, which was the rooftop of the Shopify headquarters downtown, which had an awesome view of Toronto, right? That was super cool. And also, they didn't even have to bring in a bar. It looked like they already have super professional, permanent bar built into the rooftop. So I'm sure they get to use it all the time.
Yeah, no, it's a nice office. I think that's kind of, for me, quite a lot of the value of being out there was actually talking to some of the Shopify folks. I was trying to explain to people that, Shopify's, because it's grown a lot, like trying to get any of the product team or something on email or phone, impossible. But, actually they're really friendly people when you meet them face to face. And I think just being able to actually ask some direct questions and get some helpful answers is you can only do that in person.
Yeah, I totally agree. I was a man on a mission trying to talk to the Flow team, Shopify email team, right? Talking about extensions, all the new stuff they're doing with checkouts. And they were all on the floor, right? It was like, it was kind of like a trade show floor, but it wasn't that crowded. And there was, a ton of Shopify engineers on site. So really
Yeah.
cool to just, meet people and, they weren't afraid to pull out their computer and pull up some code either. So great environment to learn, make new
Yeah.
connections. So I really enjoyed it.
As I said, I think Shopify is like that culturally. I just think at that scale, it's so hard for them to actually interface with the outside world, and actually, I think I'm it's showing my age, but I remember going to the first Unite I went to. I think it was back in 2017 in San Francisco, and it was just a much smaller org there. And I remember chatting. Someone was like, "Hey, have you been featured in the App Store yet?" And they're like, "No." It's like, "Hey, you should just go to Oren over there." And Oren was just having a beer. And it's like, "Hey, man, oh yeah, we should, just hit me up next week." And bang, next week we were just on the front page of the App Store. Like that was the way it worked.
The good old
Obviously,
days.
quite different now. But I still think it's nice that they can actually have an event and bring people together and have a bit of real in life IRL interaction.
Yeah, totally. And also, it's just a reminder that they're figuring it out the same way that we are every day. I mean, running a startup, growing a new business, it feels like you're trying to keep a million plates spinning and there's always something on fire and it's hectic, right? And that's, a strong team can control that chaos and put together something that can really work for the customer. Um, and I got the sense when I was talking to the Shopify engineers and staff that like they're living in that reality too, right? Like
Yeah.
they're just at a much bigger scale, but they're just trying to get that next commit in there, that next feature, to put things together, right? To build out the platform to support a whole bunch of constituents, right?
Yeah.
Brands, agencies, tech partners, apps, themes, etc. So, real people, real company, just trying to figure it out, put one foot in front of the other, the same way we are.
Yeah, sure. And it's like I think sometimes people get crossed with, oh, Shopify this, Shopify that, but it's very hard to also communicate when you're a big company and operating. There's so many people operating at pace. Very, very hard to keep the outside world, even internally. I'm sure, like updated on what all the latest features and stuff, all the latest changes. So, yeah, we were talking about, there's been some. I think when they moved to the new Shopify checkout extensibility, there's been a few kind of unannounced changes that like people go, "Oh, damn, yeah, we forgot about that thing." But it happens. Like they're trying to rapidly change it, and I say rapidly, kind of over a year. move their entire customer base onto a whole new checkout experience. Of course, there's going to be a few edge cases they forgot about.
Yeah, totally. All right, so let's get into it, Ed. What are we going to
Yeah.
hit on today?
Well, tell us a bit more about Grid and Pixel. Kind of start with a bit of the kind of what are you trying to solve as a company, and what's the product?
Sure, I'll give a quick intro. So I'm Lou Mincer, serial entrepreneur. This is my third business. My last one was a big hit. I built an app in the prop tech space that had a backbone built on personalization, email marketing, personalized graphics, personalized videos. Sold that company in 2020. When that deal came to fruition, I had the opportunity to take my team and start a new business. So the idea was to take that same playbook around personalization and adapt it for e-commerce, right? Commerce tech. And I have this really big vision to build this e-commerce personalization super app, right? That spans the entire customer journey. And I'm working towards that, but you got to start somewhere. And so the place that we decided to start was with one-to-one personalized graphics that drop right into Klaviyo flows and Klaviyo campaigns, right? And so the idea is not just to do a simple personalization by using somebody's first name like, hi, Ed, right? That's not real personalization. Real personalization is making people feel emotions about themselves. It's really about connecting with them as an individual, and just using a first name doesn't do much. What you really got to do is make those recipients feel appreciated and challenged and motivated, grateful, happy, right? Emotions build trust, right? So you wouldn't want to say like, you know, uh, hi, Ed, as the subject line. You want to connect it to something that they're feeling day to day, right? So if I was sending you maybe an email about your business, I'd say, "Hey Ed, business is looking great today, right? Business is looking up. Your product sure is slick. I love the way that it works and can generate returns." Those kinds of things. And so we're going to take that a level further and not just use text, but actually use graphics. And so the trick of my business is that we render all of our images and videos at the edge of the cloud in under 500 milliseconds. So each individual recipient gets a graphic, an animation, a GIF personalized to them at the moment of open, right? And it solves a problem, which is you can never pre-know which customers are going to look at which products or add certain products to the cart or get to the checkout. But it's just too much. You can't pre-make all those graphics. So the only way to really do it is in real time. And when you pull that together into a little package that lives above the fold and uses their name and other personal attributes like size, purchase history, things they viewed, you can pull that together in something that keeps people's attention, gets them to click, because you're making a connection, because you're acknowledging their hopes, their struggles, you're trying to talk to their heart, you're making them feel appreciated or understood in terms of the product they're looking at. And that, to me, is real personalization, right? It's not just names, but it's about emotional connections. And that's how you really, really can build trust and loyalty with your audience, right? And so you and I, this is a very interesting conversation because we're both involved in personalization and email personalization and have, fantastic Klaviyo integrations built on top of Shopify. But you kind of live more on the signal generation part of the personalization journey, right? And Grid and Pixel, my company, lives more on the manifestation of that personalization information, right?
Right.
Ultimately, you've got to do something with it, right? You can't
Yeah.
just live with data in a database or you're not creating any value. So you have to manifest that as a payload that appears in a flow or campaign or graphic, or maybe it's social media.
Mm.
I can show you a little more about what it looks like in a minute, but that's the core idea of
Yeah.
Grid and Pixel, right? And so we're starting there with email. We also support SMS. We now support social media, and I want to
Yeah.
take that journey to extend to more and more touch points on that buyer journey.
Yeah, it's brilliant. It was reminding actually last week I was at earlier this week I was at an event at Klaviyo's London office with an email agency partner, and they did a little poll of there were three like of their sort of best email formats she thought, and she said to the audience like, which do you think is the most engaging email? And the one that actually got voted was the one that had almost no copy in at all. It was basically all product imagery. And
Hmm.
it kind of goes to that point that a lot of email marketing now is visual. It's not about writing long text content. And so having kind of, your little curly brackets text insert into the email template is kind of missing the point. Like it's the images they're going to click on, but as you say, like the images are even more relevant to that individual. They're more likely to get clicked on.
That's right. If you analyze the click stream that comes from emails, it's predominantly people clicking on images.
Right.
And the reason is super interesting. It actually ties back to really a little bit about human biology and the way the mind works, which is images are processed about 60,000 times faster than text, right?
Mm.
Text requires a series of, processes in order to understand.
Yes.
Whereas viewing an image is almost innate. Like the brain is hardwired to process that image super fast.
Yeah.
And so, especially if you can add motion to that image, then you can really, really grab some attention quickly.
Yeah.
And that's the key. I mean, if your inbox look anything like my inbox, right, it's a mess. I'm just getting constant stream of emails.
Right.
And, even with the spam filters or the Gmail filters, like you still, your inbox is like something you got to tackle. And like
Yeah.
the best way to tackle is that to just like swipe through and delete very quickly the
Yeah.
ones that aren't interesting to you.
Yeah.
And so a big point of, my business is trying to capitalize on that moment and the data that the brand has about the recipient to create a moment of delight to get them to seize their thumb for just a second, right? Consume visually the information and then click through. And then there's a bunch of whiz bang stuff we do after that, right? Take them directly to checkout. So they're only one more click away from making the purchase, automatically applying discounts, auto login and recognition, so forth. So
Yeah.
the graphics are just the start, but it is an important piece
You've got to
of
get
that.
them to click. That's the key bit of the start of the journey. Yeah.
That's
It's
right.
also, I mean, I was also thinking about a conversation I had yesterday with one of a sales advisor, and we were talking about how, as you say, when you're going through those text-based emails, you actually don't. I basically decide to delete emails based on the kind of look of the email without reading it, because you say you don't have time to read literally all these kind of cold emails. So if by just the very outline of it, it looks like a cold sell, bang, it's gone without me even reading the greeting. Um,
Yeah, that's right. And like also it's worth noting here that the vast majority of the email that Grid and Pixel powers is not cold email, right? This
No,
is
customer
email that's
list.
going out to customers, right? And
Yeah,
these are
yeah,
customers, like people get email addresses from a bunch of places, but like the most successful brands that I've seen get email addresses from verified purchasers. If they brick and mortar, they collect it at the retail point. They'll get it through their pop up on their site. Most people also have a email collection at the footer of their site that will extend that same discount that they talk about in the footer down at the bottom in case people, instant close the pop up, but they still want it. Social media, of course, is great ways to get traffic. It's also a great place to get email addresses. And so, your mileage will vary when you're applying personalization based on the quality of your list, right? So if you've got a super great list of hardcore supporters, so much easier to create those emotional bonds and get people to click. But if you are going after um, email addresses that you got from a list or from sweepstakes or something else, you're going to see, lower performance.
I've got a comment that we have very zen backgrounds. I see it. I
Yeah, that
see
was
it's
very cool. I like
you've
that
got
little lower third effect you popped in there.
um, okay, so yeah, show us a little bit more about how the personalization would work in their inbox.
Okay, yeah, sure. Let me share my screen here. Tell me when this is coming through loud and
Yeah,
clear.
yeah, should be there.
Okay, cool. So real quick, this is Grid and Pixel. So it's a Shopify app, right? It's built for Shopify. We've got a 5-star rating. We're almost at 100 reviews. We've been
Woo.
in the market for less than a year, but business going great. We've got over 1,000 brands using the product and adding more every day. We're also a Klaviyo integration. So it's kind of tricky to get to Klaviyo integration. So I'm going to show you real quick. You have to kind of go down here to the integrations tab,
Yeah,
and then you go to add integration. And that's how you reveal kind of Klaviyo's app store. And they've got a whole bunch of different categories, but Grid and Pixels here and Little Data's here too, right?
yeah, we're weirdly under e-commerce because there isn't a good category for us. But
Okay. Oh, I've got this one checked. So Yeah, let's see.
Let's see.
There she is. All right. So anyway, we're both in the Klaviyo store, and that
Yeah,
we can talk a little bit more about that.
yeah.
But let me just jump over to Grin and Pixel, right? So I'm logged in here with one of my test stores. This is Capitalist Couture. We sell the finest garments to VC and venture capitalists. And
Mhm.
here, I'm just kind of showing you a little bit about Grid and Pixels, right? So built on top of Shopify, we automatically create a whole bunch of creative that can be used on social media, right? And so this is to help our customers acquire more traffic, acquire more email addresses. And this is all rendered automatically based on your store, but it's fully editable too, right? So we have a really nice editor that lets you adjust the size of the post or the colors that you're putting in the post or the
And
fonts,
Lou, is this
tons of
using sort of
pairings.
AI? Is he using Midjourney or something to do the generate the imagery? How do you
So
sort of
most of this part here is just hardcore computer science about
yeah,
building graphics that can render on the edge of the cloud. But we do have a lot of AI stuff in there. For instance, you
yeah,
can pull in your products from your Shopify catalog.
yeah,
And once you pick those products, you can do things like remove the
move,
background or generate a scene to put a new thing in the background. So yeah, there's a whole bunch of AI whiz bang stuff in there.
yeah,
Um, but I just want to give you a sense of kind of the different kinds
yeah.
of creative we make. So
So
one
to
big
take
kind
that one,
is
for
these.
example, what you're doing is just making it pop a bit more by adding a kind of animation effect and kind of also oscillating between two product images. You're just making it more clickable.
Yeah, that's right. Now, this is social media creative I'm showing you here, right? So this is stuff that goes to TikTok, Instagram,
Yeah,
Reels, YouTube. It gets rendered out as a 4K video that turns out to be an MP4 that you just upload through, Google Ads or Ads Manager, or so forth.
yeah,
But let's turn to the part that I think is most interesting to you, which is the email graphics, right? And so the cool part is that none of these graphics are made until the person opens the email. And so you've got this opportunity to combine attributes about the brand, attributes about the recipient or the customer, and that context data about what did they just look at?
yeah,
Where did they just sign up for? What did they have in their cart? What did they get to the checkout screen with? Right. And so we've got a whole bunch of different graphics for welcome series, right? Abandon visit, abandon cart, abandon checkout, and so forth. And so here, let's just give you the
yeah.
full example. And then we also go to, post-purchase emails and reviews and thank yous and campaigns and SMS and so forth. So a whole bunch of different stuff. But let's give you the full cycle walkthrough. So I'm going to pick this template. And just to give you an example of how each person will get a different image, you can see here
Okay.
as I flip through the different customers in my database, you can see what each different customer would get. But let's say we're going to, let's tweak the colors a little bit, come up with something that we feel good
Yep.
about sending. Just go back to that black one. And, instead of 10% off, we're going to make this puppy a 15% off.
Yeah.
It's also tied into your Klaviyo discount codes,
Yeah.
right? So you can just find the correct discount code right here. And then when you're ready, you just hit add to email. And so it's simple to drag into any flow or campaign on Klaviyo, Shopify, OmniSend, SendLane, and beyond. But let's just say Klaviyo for now. Well, the great part is with Klaviyo, it's already done at this point. And so if I just open up Klaviyo and I say, let's put it in a flow, I'm going to come down to this one. And this probably looks familiar to you and many of your
Yeah.
viewers. I'm going to drill into the variation and get into the drag and drop email editor. And so here's the beautiful part. It all just appears here as universal content automatically. So
Nice.
once this give this chance to load, there you'll see this is the graphic that we just designed. And so I just drag it over and plop it right there. And
Okay.
now it's in Klaviyo. And so not only is it in Klaviyo, but when that sends as part of a flow, each recipient in who goes through that flow is going to see a different graphic that pulls together, right, their name, their size, product imagery, the product they looked at, a unique discount code that's one-to-one made for
Yeah.
them, and will take them right into the deepest part of the checkout, right, to minimize all that friction. And then after that's live, a really cool part is you manage all those graphics inside of Grid and Pixel. And let's just go to a crazy color palette just to like show you what that
Yeah.
looks
So
like.
how does that work? So basically, like when the user loads the email, there's a kind of user Klaviyo profile ID, and then on your end, as you say, in those milliseconds before they read the email, you're basically deciding based on their profile what's the right image to render.
That's it. I mean, a significant amount of the data is packaged in the URL itself. So you
Right.
should picture the URLs to these graphics as like monsters,
Right.
right? They're like
Right. Right.
4 or
Right.
5,000 character URLs.
Right.
But
Right.
yes, at the moment of delivery, we have like, it's not even a fraction of a second. It's like,
Yeah.
like milliseconds to make adjustments to what the person's going to see.
Yeah.
And then we check where the person is checking the email from, and we render it into the appropriate payload for their client, right? So if
Yeah.
they're checking on their iPhone, they might get an animated SVG. If they're checking on Apple Mail or Outlook, they'll get an MP4. If they're
Yeah.
checking in Gmail, they'll get a GIF, right? And
Yeah.
so we guarantee that our creatives will not only be personalized, but will animate in like 99.9% of inboxes at that moment of render.
Yeah. And I think it's a good moment to segue into kind of how little data and Grid and Pixel work together, because actually there's two things that make that email more relevant. So the first thing is if you're just able to track more of the actual products that are browsed and added to cart to a Klaviyo profile, obviously
Mm-hmm.
you have more idea of, I'm sure for quite a lot of the profiles, they haven't interacted with the site recently. So you kind of have to guess based on maybe their demographic or whatever, what products they might want. But obviously if they actually have been on your storefront, little data can maybe double the kind of number of people who can be tracked on who are on your Klaviyo list, but we can now kind of get their browsing behavior. But obviously the other side
Totally.
of it is just the triggering of the campaign. So the challenge that a lot of Klaviyo brands have is that they're not getting as I said, they have people on the list. They've done all the right things, as you say, kind of ethically collecting lists from current customers and people who opted in. But those people are browsing, or maybe they click through an email, or they're coming back again. And the opportunity is then to send them a relevant timed email that says, hey, there was this product you were off, as you say, maybe you have a discount, maybe whatever. But you need to be able to trigger that email. And that's what we're doing is triggering, maybe, certainly 50% more of those abandoned browse and abandoned cart emails, maybe up to a double.
Yeah, that's awesome. I mean, that is why our products work so great together, because you generate more signal and then I
Yeah.
increase the conversion rate of that
Yeah.
signal, right? And just like so your audience knows, because I'm sure you have a lot of Klaviyo kind of ninjas in the house. Is like here's the recipe, right? So like step one, if you're a brand that sells on Shopify and uses Klaviyo for email and SMS marketing, then you probably already have an abandoned browse flow inside of Klaviyo, right? And so the next step would actually be to go to the Shopify App Store, install Little Data, and add the Klaviyo connection, right? So that you can start doing all the server-side tracking stuff, right? Then you go into Klaviyo and you find that abandoned browse flow, you duplicate it, and then you change the trigger to Little Data server-side viewed product event, right? And so that really differentiates the people that Little Data is triggering into the system, so you can keep track of that. And then because Little Data passes along all the same data objects from Klaviyo and Shopify throughout the rest of the flow, in the emails that are attached to that flow, you simply design on Grid and Pixel like normal. You drag it in as a universal block, and the graphics in your email will automatically one-to-one personalize to the recipient. So it's kind of like you know double, like you get like more bang for your buck, right? Because step one is you get more signal, so you get a chance to send more emails to your existing customers. And then
Yeah.
step two, you get better conversion rate because you're sending a one-to-one personalized payload that has the
Yeah.
best opportunity of like getting them to stop, interact, and click, right? Because I mean, you probably know so many people don't buy or don't complete their checkout for a million reasons that aren't I didn't want it, right? Like there's just so
Oh,
many distractions between,
oh,
notifications, your kid runs in, like sometimes you got to put the phone down, right? And come back to it later. And that is, one of the opportunities where we can create a lot of value for brands and agencies who work with brands.
Yeah, it's something actually we covered on the live stream last week with another agency partner. Um, Subject line, and saying that brands often like turn to discounts to win people back, but that's kind of missing the point. As you say, the majority of the case is not that they've been shopping around for price or they're waiting for you to drop the price of the product. So the majority of cases is simply about the fact that they got distracted, or maybe like I have that all the time. Like I left my I can't remember my credit card pin, so I have to go upstairs for my wallet, and then dang, say then the kids want me and stuff, and so it's that the modern problem in life is not that I can't pay. Obviously, that there are some situations where I'm price sensitive, but I think for a lot of brands that they shouldn't reach for the discount straight away, because often it's just a matter of having a timely reminder to come back and engage.
Yeah, that's totally right. I mean, look, discounts are very similar to couponing. Couponing's been around for a long, long, long time, right? And couponing is effective because it's a form of price discrimination, right? That allows you to serve more of the market. And so that has a very direct translation to modern e-commerce and commerce tech, because we are able now to use the same couponing strategy that's existed for 100 years in just a hyper targeted and hyper personalized way that allows you to execute a couponing or price discrimination strategy that's so much more effective, right? And that's the way that you sell more product, but also delight your customers by forming a more real relationship with them through images and video.
Yep, yep. So I have a bit of a curveball question for you to perhaps wrap up with, which is like,
Yeah, let's do it.
obviously like this is such a it's such an important thing. Everyone, Klaviyo themselves talk a lot about personalization. Why doesn't Klaviyo have a feature like this, as part of their product?
It's a great question. And when I was building this business, I wasn't sure if Klaviyo was going to be friend or foe, right?
Yeah,
Because it seems like they've got all the horsepower. And if they wanted to, they could certainly focus their attention on this. The answer is they're a friend.
yeah,
They have a ton of other fish to fry. They're building their CDP. They're executing an enterprise strategy. They
yeah,
are diversifying away from the perceived platform risk of being over reliant on shop. They got like a lot of irons in the fire is
sure,
the answer.
yeah,
And they look at one-to-one personalized graphics, personalized animations, the ability to have a CapCut style video editor right inside of Klaviyo as like something they wish they could have, and they're not going to execute it, at least not in the short run. And so
yeah,
they've taken an enablement posture, and they have been awesome. I mean, what I just showed you about how you can access grid and pixel graphics through the universal tab is exists because they wanted it to exist. Of course, I wanted that to exist.
yeah, yeah,
You
yeah,
used to have to copy code from
yeah,
one place to another. You
yeah,
no longer do, because they
yeah,
identified that as a bottleneck and tried to enable grid
yeah,
and pixel to move faster. So, and I imagine it's the same for you, right? I found their
absolutely, yeah.
ecosystem and developer relations to be really, really great.
Very much so, and they've been super great about rolling out some of their newer APIs for us. I think you're right. So it kind of goes back to what we were talking about Shopify in the beginning. It's very easy on the outside to imagine these companies have all the resources and can do everything they want, but obviously at a bigger scale, there's just ever more battles to fight. And I think Klaviyo are doing the right thing. I mean, you mentioned the integrations directory there. We're both quite early into that. And I think they do have a vision to get that into more of a kind of app store type experience in time, because they see that's what's worked hugely well for Shopify in terms of enabling them to. Yeah, there's no way Shopify could have launched all the functionality that they have in the App Store, in 20 years. So that sort of partner-led approach to growth has benefited them, and I think Klaviyo sees the same thing. Let's maintain a great core platform. Let's provide. They talk a lot in their product your roadmap presentations about the sort of core Klaviyo data set they're building on. But I think you're right. You fit sort of, so you say, at the higher level, at the kind of actually delivery of the personalization bit. But obviously, as you said, not just for email. Obviously, there's a wider use for that kind of personal content on other channels, other mediums. And we fit right at the bottom of their stack in terms of actually feeding in the event data in. And again, that's not something they're super focused on. They're more focused on actually how do we, kind of make use of that in terms of segmentation and recommendations.
Yeah, that's
Um,
right.
so yeah, I think great. Yeah, they have been a great partner, and obviously they're not the only email partner out there, but they certainly do have a very dominant position in the sort of larger Shopify brand space.
Yeah, and it's also great because it is an interface that allows, other independent software vendors in the space like work together very easily, right? Like I didn't know that Little Data and Grid and Pixel work together so perfectly until I
Yeah,
actually tried it, right? And that wasn't we didn't have a grand design for making the best abandoned visit flow possible, which I think we kind of have done.
yeah,
That is by virtue of us both participating on the Klaviyo
yeah.
API ecosystem, right? And it turns out like the Lego pieces fit together perfectly. And, if there's brands or agencies that work with brands listening to this, I'd be really happy to have a conversation afterwards, or maybe Ed and I can both have a conversation with you to talk about exactly how you can take advantage of the new signal and the personalization delivery vehicle to really drive a higher revenue per recipient, drive more clicks, drive more conversions, drive overall revenue in general.
100%. And I think so many people talk about personalization. I've had those conversations over the last decade, but it's actually the ability to be able to very easily action that and make use of it without overcomplicating. Because trying to like run a 1,000 different segments in Klaviyo is a route to insanity. I think you have
Yeah,
to be able to find a way you can just send out a general flow, but personalize the content.
yeah, it's all about execution. So, and sales, but we'll save that for another conversation.
Indeed. Thanks so much for joining us. And thanks everyone for listening. And I hope you can listen to us next week.
Yeah, this is so cool. Thanks, Ed.